Hello everyone. Welcome to Berberine, the Master Metabolism Herb. I'm Maggie Jacqua. I'm the Content Director of Whole Foods Magazine, and I'm honored to be your moderator for today's webinar. Thank you all for joining us. So as you know, berberine isn't new. It's actually a time-tested herb, and it has been safely used for thousands of years for a wide variety of benefits. But it is currently generating major buzz. So for some people, it does seem very new. You've no doubt heard that this herb is trending on TikTok and on other social media channels. And you've probably seen mainstream media outlets reporting on the herb and its benefits. Google searches are spiking. Consumers want to learn more and they're coming to their natural products stores for information. And we know that berberine often shows up on Whole Foods Magazine's What's Selling list. And that's where independent natural products retailers share their best-selling supplements. And it is one to watch for sure on those lists. But with all the buzz currently surrounding berberine, it's important to sort out where the science stands and to separate out the hype. And the good news is there's a lot of science supporting this herb. And today, Julia Craven, she's the VP of Education for Enzymedica. She's going to share the modern science and tell us how berberine supports overall metabolic and microbiome health. Before I turn it over to Julia, I just want to say we already have questions coming in. That is fabulous. Post your questions in the Q&A box, and we're going to answer those at the end of her presentation. So we'll get your questions answered. If you have any technical issues or other comments, put those in the chat box and we'll help you out there. I also want to mention an important disclaimer. This is a scientific and technical presentation. Understand that the information in this presentation is intended for educational and scientific purposes only, is not intended as medical or nutritional advice for the treatment or prevention of disease. For medical advice, as always, one is to consult their personal healthcare provider. We're going to cover a lot of ground. A question we always get is, will this be available on demand? Yes, it will. After the presentation, we'll get it up so you can share with your colleagues who weren't able to join us. And now let's dive in. Julia, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. Again, thank you for joining. I am going to, all right, everybody, ready to go here. There's always that moment of getting all the technical set up. So again, my name is Julia Craven. I have been with Enzymedica since 2007, but I have been in the natural products industry since 1989. And it's pretty much all I've done my whole career. So for those of us that have been around for a while, we've seen these kinds of trends before. Anyone who's been hanging around as long as I am can remember when St. John's wort hit, or when echinacea was the big thing, and then it was CoQ10. And these huge trends have driven a lot of education. But we live in a little bit of a different time now, and this huge trend really got its footing on TikTok, which is interesting. And so it got its footing in a way that was really talking about berberine in support of weight loss. But what I want to focus on today is the why. Why is that one of the positive side effects of what berberine can do? And also, what else can berberine do? What's the science? And then how can we help to integrate that into our stores, when we're talking with people, and really helping our consumers to understand this from a thoughtful and well-informed point of view, as opposed to, what some of the TikTokers are saying. So it's like great that it's getting this attention, but let's come at it in the way that we always do as an industry, which is with ethics and science and information, as well as our own practical experience. So berberine is far, far more than the latest trend. It's been around for, it's got thousands of years of use and information. And berberine is actually just the alkaloid. So when people talk about berberine, they may think that they're talking about the whole plant, but actually what they're usually talking about is the alkaloid that is often derived from berberine. And the most common source that we see is from barberry, which could be the genus and species of Berberis vulgaris or the Aristata. Those are the most common that we see when we're thinking about natural medicine. It can also be derived from Oregon grapefruit, golden seal, and Chinese gold thread, also known as coptis. And they're all these, bright yellow alkaloid plants. It was first isolated in 1917 from golden seal. But as many of you know, we wouldn't want to use golden seal long-term to derive anything but the pure golden seal plant, because in many states in the US, it's endangered, and nationally it is on watch lists. So we don't want to go out and create more of a situation. Fortunately, barberry is extremely, sorry, I'm having a problem there. Barberry is extremely robust in how it grows. It's ethical, it's easy to source. So we really don't have a problem sourcing berberine at all. We just want to be able to get it from the right plant, and golden seal is not the right plant for that job. So when we see berberine HCl on a package, that's indicating that it's the alkaloid only, not the whole plant. If you were to see berberine, and oftentimes it'll have in parentheses root, that would be the whole plant, or barberry, the whole plant. So most of them are coming again from the Aristata or the vulgaris of the barberry, also known as Indian barberry. There are over 500, but it's interesting, there's an estimate of between 450 and 500 different species of barberry. So when I went looking online, I wanted to see if I could get a berberine plant or a barberry plant, and there's many garden varieties of it, but it does grow prolifically in the Himalayas. And I went and really validated this for myself. I went to the CITES and the Red List. There is no problems with anything on the endangered species lists, specifically for the barberry and the Aristata. There are a couple species that are under watch. And I bring this up because when berberine started getting really popular, I started getting a couple of emails that were saying, wait a second, this is endangered. And they would send me a link. Well, that link went back to a 2008 statement about these very, unknown species of barberry. So I just want to assure everybody that it is quite sustainable. It grows prolifically naturally, specifically in India and the Himalayas. So, like I said before, it's got thousands of years of use, 3,000 years in traditional Chinese medicine, but it's in Ayurveda and European medicine. So this starts to make sense, right? Because it's a hardy plant that grows in a lot of different kinds of climates, and there's a few genus and species that can be used. So it's really has inhabited many different cultures and cultural medicines throughout the world. And so that's why we have this long history of safety data, is because there are various ones that were growing all over the planet. But the majority of the historic use references really focus around a few things. And one is that antimicrobial support, right? That gut antimicrobial support, in addition to supporting healthy gut tissues. Diarrhea is very often cited as berberine being supportive of stopping diarrhea, which is interesting because we have a lot of people talking about diarrhea as something that is beginning when they start to take berberine. So I'm going to go into why that's happening a little bit, and then cardiovascular support. So in recent years, though, as we're seeing right now, we're seeing that it has a real focus on blood sugar, healthy blood sugar regulation, and metabolic function. One of the things that we're seeing a lot in the media is the statement, berberine doesn't have enough science behind it. They're saying there aren't enough studies on it. We're not sure that it's safe. If there are studies, they're very small. And that is simply not the case. Berberine is one of the most studied herbs that I've ever laid eyes on. You can find prolific information on berberine. So there's one that is specifically, one of the larger ones is 2015, a meta-analysis was performed on 27 clinical trials, which included over 2,500 patients. And these are very reputable sources for these studies. There's another meta-analysis that has happened that took into consideration 1,600 documents and combined 18 studies on berberine. And both of these big meta-analysis studies pointed to that berberine had a meaningful impact on overall metabolic health. So we can see on the right what is overall metabolic health. It's that healthy lipid profile, blood sugar levels, metabolism, healthy circulatory system. These are all things that make up metabolic health. It is not one thing. It is a combination of things. And also, it is not just berberine that is going to help these things, it's always in consideration of diet and lifestyle. You can't just keep on, eating the standard American diet and start to take, 3 berberine a day and think that that's going to do the trick. I do want to mention too, that in most of the studies, and specifically on these 2 meta-analysis that I mentioned, but also as I've just looked across the research of the studies, typically the dosage is 1,500 to 2,000 milligrams. That's generally the dosage that's given, and that's in divided doses throughout the day. And so that's why we have such a huge weight of berberine HCl 500 milligrams on the market, is because then a consumer can easily take 1-3 times a day with every meal and get to that clinical study milligram amount that is so regularly out there. So this is especially important right now. And these were some of my education slides before the whole thing happened. So we really, really do have an issue in our country with obesity. It is epidemic. Today, nearly 1 in 3 adults are overweight and 42% are obesity, 9% with severe. By 2030, it's estimated that half of adult Americans will be obese. This is a huge issue. This is not vanity. This is not, I want to look better during the summer. This is, this is really serious health issues that are being caused by obesity. And we all know people are trying, and it's not for lack of effort. But part of the big problem, and one of the major impediments to people being able to, get to a better body fat percentage in a truly healthy way with diet and exercise, is sugar cravings. And I look exactly like this guy at about 9:30 at night. I'm like, I've been really good all day. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, I want to eat sugar right now. And I look like him in front of the refrigerator. So it's interesting to me that 1 in 3 Americans experience problems with healthy blood sugar metabolism. And we have that same percentage with people who are overweight. Sugar addiction is a very, very real thing. It can be a major impediment to getting to that healthy weight loss protocol. And I want to make it clear, when I say sugar, I don't just mean sweets. I mean refined carbohydrates. I think that a lot of people on this call can probably identify with this statement, is that we ask our customers about sugar and sugar cravings, and they say, oh no, I never eat sugar. Well, do you eat a lot of pasta or, a lot of white breads? Oh yeah, I can't live without my pasta. To the body, they're very, very, very similar. So it's, when we're talking about healthy blood sugar and diet, it's not just about the actual sugar. It can be about those refined carbohydrates. And for some people, even just too much fruit or too much of those starchy vegetables can be the craving, not necessarily the sweet thing. And berberine has been well known to be helpful in supporting these healthy blood sugar levels. And we're going to talk about how that works here. So how berberine works for helping with the healthy blood sugar levels is that it's really, really supportive for insulin sensitivity. Yet another study, there's a study of people who actually did have metabolic syndrome, who took 3 500 milligram berberine HCl capsules per day in a divided dose for 90 days. And compared with the placebo group, again, remember, these people are pretty far down the path of blood sugar dysregulation with their condition. But compared to the placebo group, there were really significant benefits with regard to weight circumference, blood pressure, and then insulin sensitivity as well. And I don't know if there's a way that we can cite these studies better, but I do have links to them on every single page, so that in the future, if people want to go look back, they most certainly can. So how is this working though? Like, how does this actually happen? So berberine helps to boost healthy glycosis. So sorry about that. There's a typo on my slide. So what it's doing is it's helping to boost healthy blood sugar metabolism, utilizing sugar properly, making sure that the insulin is working properly. But it also helps to modulate gluconeogenesis, which is that sugar production that happens primarily in the liver and the kidneys as well. So we're having a great combination here with berberine. It's very tonic, if you will, for blood sugar metabolism by increasing that blood sugar metabolism and helping to decrease our body's sugar production. So how this helps with that stable blood sugar, we always want to be kind of riding along on a nice stable blood sugar wave, right? But if that is not happening, you can see on the bottom of that chart that wild line. So if we start out, we're doing okay, but then there's that dip. Where that dip is where people crave the sugar. It's when the blood sugar goes too low, and then we eat the sugar, then it gets too high, and then we crash again, and now we're on the sugar roller coaster. So berberine has this beautiful modulating effect for healthy blood sugar levels. But in addition, and this is really kind of a fun part here, is berberine activates a metabolic enzyme called AMPK. I'm going to say it here, adenosine monophosphate activated protein kinase. Kinase ends with an ASE. Lots of things that end with an ASE are an enzyme. Berberine activates a very, very important metabolic enzyme, often called the metabolic master switch, and it's found in every single cell of the body. So I like to help customers understand AMPK a little bit by giving them practical examples. Many people are doing intermittent fasting these days, and fasting has long been known for all of its health benefits. So fasting actually activates AMPK. Vigorous exercise. I'm talking about the kind of exercise where when you're done, you're dripping with sweat. Vigorous exercise will activate AMPK. Hot sauna, cold plunge, extreme temperatures also activate AMPK. These are all things that are really popular right now. And I like to say, you know, I still have not managed the cold shower in the morning. I've been trying for the last couple of years because I know how good it is for you, how much it is so important to activate AMPK for short periods of time. And I'm like, I can't do it yet, but I will take my berberine every single day. So these are examples of these temporary stressors that are put on the body intentionally, which help to spur it into a healing state. So if we look at this, look at the chart on the right and all of the things that AMPK activates in our body. It activates parts of the immune system. It activates the circulatory system, glucose uptake. We can go on and on and on. You can see how important AMPK activation is. And again, it's in response to stressors. So not just the ones that we're talking about in popular media right now, but low glucose, heavy exertion, temperatures. These things deplete our cellular ATP supplies. So when ATP starts to get low, the AMPK activation, it actually helps to stimulate more more ATP in our cells. So they work together. And AMPK stimulates that energy generating process directly linked to glucose uptake. So you can see how important this enzyme AMPK is in our body and all of the things that it is touching. And we can very directly look back at this relationship between AMPK and metabolic issues. So this is super important here because, again, we're not talking just about metabolism. Metabolism is thought about as this big weight loss umbrella, but this is not just metabolism, it's metabolic health. And part of metabolic health is healthy metabolism. So moving on to the microbiome, one of my favorite subjects for obvious reasons. It's well known that the colonies in your microbiome can really, really have an impact on some of the aspects of metabolic health. So there is a specific species of gut bacteria called Akkermansia muciniphila. And I call it the darling of the microbiome world because there's tons and tons of research going on about Akkermansia right now. It's a native keystone bacteria that we all should have. And it should be about 3 to 5% of the total human microflora. So there's those people that they can eat absolutely anything and they still remain very slender. It's often shown that those people have higher colonies of this Akkermansia muciniphila, and that there's this positive correlation between robust akkermansia as well as decreases in metabolic syndrome, obesity, and age-associated mental decline as well. So akkermansia is very interesting because the reason it has that second part of it, mucinophila, is akkermansia actually feeds on the mucin in your gut lining, the top layer of the mucin lining. But part of the feeding on that process is it actually helps to stimulate the mucin as well. And the byproduct of this are short chain fatty acids, including butyrates. We've been talking about butyrates for years and years and years in our industry. Butyrates are vital energy sources for the mucus secreting cells in the intestinal epithelial cells. So basically, the epithelial cells are really, really supported and regenerated by the presence of butyrates. Butyrates are created by akkermansia. So the other thing that these butyrates do is they help to strengthen tight junctions in the intestines. So if we want to imagine our intestines as, think of them as having these little fingers, right? So the junctions, our intestines, our epithelial cells should be sitting next to each other really, really tightly like this. But what happens over time is that when this mucin layer starts to become degraded and there starts to become damage, then all of a sudden these junctions start to open. Our epithelial cells start to open. And often it's because of a stimulation of a hormone called zonulin. So zonulin is like a gatekeeper, and many food intolerances are actually related to this zonulin secretion. So the gatekeeper opens up, and then what we get is we get particularly proteins leaking into the bloodstream. This is leaky gut now, and all kinds of immune stimulation has occurring because the immune system says, hey, wait a minute, you're not supposed to belong here. So butyrates help to strengthen that area, strengthen up the tight junction boxes, and in turn, because of that, we're getting less immune activation. So I know that we're starting with healthy blood sugar levels, but I want to just show how berberine can be so amazing for helping to support our body's own natural metabolic health. It's true that the statement saying that, oh, it's not studied for weight loss has some truth in it. There are some very small studies, but it's because they're not looking at all of the pieces of what does healthy metabolism mean. They're not looking at the blood sugar balance. They're not looking at the GI health. They're not looking at the microbiome. They're looking at one thing, not the whole picture of what metabolic health is, which will eventually lead to healthy body fat percentage. So it's been shown too in the dysregulated sugar imbalance state in the intestines, the mucosal barrier gets very, very worn down. And interesting, one of the most popular medications, prescriptions for this diabetic state is actually part of its activity is helping to build up that mucilaginous layer in the gut. So again, it's also been shown that akkermansia directly is involved in the immune response. So it really does have such an incredible activity on the gut. Berberine is basically like a prebiotic for akkermansia and other important keystone bacteria as well. So again, we know health starts in the gut. I call the microbiome the microbiome because it really is the home of so much signaling that happens throughout the body. So if we're looking at something multifaceted like metabolic health, we have to know that the microbiome is involved. So the last thing about the microbiome is the dysbiosis that's happening. So dysbiosis is an imbalance of bacterial composition. And what has happened is that there's a loss of beneficial bacteria and then an overgrowth of potentially pathogenic bacteria, and we're getting a loss of this diversity. But one of the things that happens in dysbiosis, which makes it hard to get out of the state, back into a better balanced state in the microbiome, one of the things that happens are biofilms. So I like to describe biofilms as, think of the tartar that's on your teeth. It's this recalcitrant layer that's holding bacteria. It's not much different in your gut. Think of it as tartar in your gut. There's an illustration here which shows that there's individual microbes which start and then eventually they attach. Now, this is where the body is really smart and sometimes the body is not so smart, right? This is homeostasis. So there's these bacteria that are floating around in the gut, and they begin to land and attach, and the body's like, oh, you don't belong here. I don't want you floating around. So this barrier is created over the attachment to help to keep it in place, because it's a protective mechanism, right? So what happens after that attachment? Well, the bacteria grow and grow and grow. So you get to growth and maturity, but eventually they burst. And this is the dispersion phase. So now an overgrowth of bacteria is now dispersing again through the intestines. It just gets too big and it disperses. So now it's a cycle, right? Because the body wanted to protect itself from this dispersion, it actually is setting it up so that the immune system can't see it. Our white blood cells cannot see this bacteria and remove them normally. This is why biofilms can be really kind of tough to get rid of. But berberine has long been used because of the high alkaloids in the barberry plant, has long been used as a biofilm buster. And this is why berberine is at the root of so many digestive treatment plans, is that it's really, really great biofilm buster, but it has that second activity. Remember, berberine is also quite antimicrobial because of the alkaloids in it, and it's helping to regrow Akkermansia and other keystone bacteria. So just for this, berberine is so incredible. So when you're talking with your digestive customers and you've gone through food intolerances already, and you've gone through bowel movement habits, and you've gone through, are you taking probiotics? Are you using digestive enzymes? You've gone through all these things, and maybe they have some more advanced situations going on. Think about berberine, because berberine can be very, very supportive of helping to clean up that environment. Now, remember when I said we were going to talk about berberine and some of the common side effects that we're seeing in the media right now? What we're seeing is people saying, oh my gosh, it gave me such bad diarrhea. Oh, it's terrible. Give me terrible diarrhea. Well, let's think about it. We know that berberine helps to cleave biofilms. Berberine is very supportive for helping to reset the microbiome. So what's going to happen from that? We may get a cleansing process. So sometimes that's what's actually happening, especially when we have something that's so huge in the media. We have people who have not, they might, again, be on that standard American diet, have that long-term dysbiosis happening in their gut. And now we're putting in something that's quite cleansing. And berberine, may, for a short term, give that effect. So I just wanted to give a heads up for people who may be getting that feedback. And there are some solutions for this. Obviously, lowering the dose is going to be one of them. So if we keep moving on, I had an animation in there. So berberine recap. Here's the things to know. It supports healthy blood sugar levels, making it easier to kick the sugar habit, but it also supports healthy blood sugar levels on a true metabolic activity state. So it's helping the insulin sensitivity, it's helping to decrease sugar production in the liver, and it's helping with blood sugar metabolism overall. What that means to a customer is, I don't crave sugar as much. I know if I don't take my berberine on the regular, I find myself starting to eat more carbohydrates and more sugar, and I'm pretty keto most of the time. And so berberine really has helped me to stay on that plan, which is so beneficial for me personally on many different levels. So what it means to a customer is, you're having a hard time because of cravings, berberine can really help with that. Activation of AMPK, that metabolic master switch enzyme, which really goes hand in hand with that ATP production, and then enhances gut bacteria, specifically Akkermansia muciniphila, which the bacteria itself is known to support glucose metabolism, but then it has all these other wonderful benefits for protecting the mucin lining, helping to create butyrates, helping to support repair if the gut tissue is in a permeable state. So when we look at berberine, it has so much that it can do that is way beyond what anybody else is talking about on TikTok or the news. It really is one of these fundamental herbal remedies that can help in so many different ways. So it's a fantastic remedy. we all know this, but it does have a few challenges. It has fairly low bioavailability. It's estimated that less than 0.5% of berberine is actually getting into the bloodstream. So you may have some of those good effects in the gut, but it may have a hard time actually getting into the bloodstream and making entry into the cell. So this is why we see higher doses. This is why we need to be looking at 1,500 to 2,000 milligrams when we're taking the berberine HCLs, because not a lot is actually getting into the bloodstream. And then these large doses can cause an uncomfortable detox, or for some individuals who may have some sensitive gut lining, it can actually irritate the intestinal lining, which makes sense, right? It's an alkaloid. All the alkaloids are going to irritate intestinal lining, and it just may not be tolerated well. So berberine benefits, great for blood sugar regulation, great for the microbiome, stimulates AMPK. Not so great benefits, low bioavailability. You need to take more of it. You're taking more capsules more often. And then the larger doses can be rough on the intestines if somebody is already sensitive there, or if it's throwing them in to a detox situation. So the bioavailability issue has been solved. There is new berberine out on the market that is a phytosome. And it has been shown in the human clinical. And when I talk about the phytosome moving forward, it is all from one human clinical trial, that the berberine phytosome delivers almost 10 times better activity. And you can see in the chart on the right, the green line is berberine HCl, and the red and the blue lines are the berberine phytosome in different doses. So massive, massive increases in bioavailability. So probably many of you already know about phytosome technology. Ginkgo phytosome has been out for a very long time. Green tea phytosome has been out for a very long time. It's not new, but what is new is that now we have a flooding on the market of liposomes as well as phytosomes. So I want to explain the difference between the two really quickly. So the liposome is more like a fatty layer that goes around the nutrient to help to protect it and to deliver it into the cell. The phytosome is different. It's actually a phospholipid bound complex. So the efficacy of phytosomes, in fact, one of the most popular ones is curcumin phytosome, which is under the brand name Meriva. You can see a dramatic increase in bioavailability through any phytosomal plant delivery system, and obviously berberine is no exception. So the phytosome uses a very, very, very small amount of pea protein to help to gain entry into the cell, and then a grapeseed phytosome along with it. The grapeseed is actually put there to help to soothe intestinal cells. So the grapeseed is very calming for the intestinal cells should some irritation be going on. It really helps to support that delicate intestinal cellular tissue. And then the fat in the phytosome is sunflower, which is very, very preferential to soy, which is often used in both phytosomes and liposomes. So I see that we have some questions coming in, and before we go on too much longer, I want to just look at the Q&A. So the first one is 30 minutes or more before eating with berberine. As with many herbs, you're going to get a better effect if they're on a more empty stomach. So it's just, that's more of an absorption issue. I take berberine, if I've forgotten, I will take it with food just because I want to keep it going in me. It's such an important remedy for me. So is it absolutely necessary? No. Is it much better? Yes, it is much better to have it on a closer to an empty stomach. And Bruce, is there data to support that berberine is a metformin analog? Yes, I just can't, we can try to figure out how studies might be able to be sent out in order to be able to support that. Is berberine safe for everyone? I love this question because I don't think there is a remedy that's safe for everyone. So we wouldn't want to have berberine if somebody is already taking a medication for blood sugar regulation. It could lower blood sugar way too much. And we wouldn't want to have it for pregnancy. It's not appropriate for children as well. So those are the big buckets. So if there's any kind of blood sugar regulation issue, I would strongly suggest, and when I say this, I mean more advanced blood sugar regulation, I would strongly suggest that somebody be at least measuring, taking their own blood sugar levels, but certainly you always want to work with your qualified healthcare practitioner. But absolutely, if you're taking that medication, you want to avoid taking berberine at the same time. Can berberine taken long-term? I love this. So there's two things on this, and I actually get this question fairly often. According to the NIH and the data that they've gathered, berberine is very safe for long-term use. Again, remembering we have thousands of years of safety data of berberine. But what I do see is that some practitioners suggest pulsing with it, so not staying on it long-term. I have dug into the science of why on that, and I've not been able to find any. Because I was getting the question pretty regularly for a while. And so I really wanted to understand if there is an actual reason for it, or if it's just that it's an alkaloid. And alkaloids can be harsh over time. But you know what else is an alkaloid? Caffeine, chocolate, lots of other alkaloids that we're eating every single day. So personally, there's nothing that I've found that really is compelling to me to say berberine isn't safe for long-term use. But I did want to say that information is out there. Can berberine taken also, is it safe for type 2 diabetics if taken on insulin? I would just absolutely work with a healthcare practitioner on that. There are varying opinions on it, but that's one of those places where we very kindly say you want to work with a doctor on this one. How would berberine help autoimmune like Hashimoto's, contraindications with other herbs? So there is a correlation between Hashimoto's and leaky gut. And the way that works is that, like I mentioned, the proteins kind of leaking into the bloodstream where they don't belong, activating the immune system. When this happens over a long period of time, it can really pull on both the adrenals and the thyroid. We see this a lot in individuals who have long-term undiagnosed celiac, and that gut permeability has really, really taken hold. So I wouldn't say direct, but I would say by proxy, it can help to support the healthy healing of that intestinal tissue with leaky gut, and then that by side effect on the Hashimoto's. It wouldn't be my first line of defense by any means personally. Does eating a protein with sugar, sweet, or carb avoid the squiggly levels? Yes, it does. It is often recommended that if you are going to eat something sweet, that you eat some protein with it to help to regulate that. And is there a method to increase akkermansia with berberine being supportive for those who have extreme deficiency? Honestly, it's just taking it. And usually it's at that 1500 milligram mark. It's just taking the berberine regularly. And so I'm going to pause on questions now. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything big before I went into the results on the phytosome. So when I started to see the results from the human clinical on the phytosome, I was really, really impressed. And this is one of the reasons that Enzymedica chose to launch the phytosome, and we were the first to do it. So if we look at all of the markers on the left, we have BMI, VAT, that's visceral adipose tissue, waist circumference, hip circumference, etc. 3% on a BMI over 60 days, maybe that looks small, but that's no joke. And I did dive into the study, and they were not on caloric restriction. There was no change in diet happening. So this was just the berberine very, very much on its own. But if you look here, the really, really impressive number is that visceral adipose tissue going down 16% over 30 days and 22% over 60 days. But not to, ignore the fat mass loss, 7% in 60 days. I will take that. I will take 7% fat loss mass, and then total mass as well. But really, the key here is that visceral adipose tissue. So what is it? Well, we all have healthy visceral fat, and this is the illustration on the left. It's that internal fat that surrounds our organs, and we are supposed to have it there. It is a protective mechanism to help to protect our internal organs. However, overall, increased visceral fat deposits are starting to be linked to metabolic disorders, obesity, and increased cytokine production. Now, here's where it's really interesting. Visceral fat contains an enzyme called aromatase, which converts testosterone into estrogen. Okay, this is where visceral fat is something that we do not want to have a lot of. And I'm having a problem advancing my slide. There we go. So it's considered a hormonally active fat. It's the active body fat. And again, secreting, really transitioning the hormones from the testosterone to the estrogen. So we think about it, look at estrogen dominance and imbalance. It's not just estrogenic foods. It's not just xenoestrogens. It can be an overabundance of that visceral adipose tissues. So that waist circumference can actually be throwing hormones out of whack for both men and women. And again, looking at the effects of the berberine phytosome over 30 and 60 days, 22% decrease in visceral adipose tissue. And I do want to mention that to get these higher numbers of the reduction of VAT, the dosage was 2 caps of the phytosome 2 times a day. So it is a little bit of a higher dose. So in any case, that number is extremely, extremely impressive, especially when visceral adipose tissue can be so hard because it's a hormonal fat. So the person is experiencing the issue of having an overabundance of estrogen because of that testosterone transition due to the enzyme aromatase. So, and by the way, aromatase is an endogenous enzyme. It's not an enzyme that you can take. It's one of the many, many that our bodies create, but it cannot be taken. It's not a supplemental enzyme. So another part of the research after the study was after 30 days of treatment, there was really, really meaningful impact on insulin activity. So if we look at this, the way that it was measured was the HOMA, which is a calculation for how to measure insulin sensitivity. So the higher the HOMA score, the higher the risk of insulin resistance. If we look at this again, 30 days down 37%, and 60 days down 49%. This has real activity on insulin sensitivity and the function of insulin in our bodies. So we all know how important that is as far as going back to looking at the top of where we started talking about with metabolic health. Again, it's not just the weight loss craze that's going on. It's about truly helping our customers understand it's metabolic health, and that can get you to healthier body fat percentages. So just to recap, again, supports healthy blood sugar level, making it easier to kick the sugar habit. Activation of AMPK, that metabolic master switch enzyme. You can either go for a cold plunge or you can take some berberine, right? And then enhances the gut bacteria Akkermansia. Again, the bacteria known on its own to help to support the glucose metabolism. But again, Akkermansia has such a wide benefit overall for the microbiome that we're going to see generally much better microbiome diversity, populations, less leaky gut. Again, the ripples from that go throughout our entire bodies. So there is a place for both the berberine HCl and the berberine phytosome. They're both berberine. They're both going to do the same things. It's not like you use the HCl for one and the phytosome for another. But there absolutely is a place for it. So if you're looking at, I want to achieve the benefits of the larger, like the human clinical studies, those larger studies, those are used, that is used for using the HCl, that 500 milligram. But we have amazing research human research starting with the phytosome itself. So I don't want to say they're different. The phytosome is a smaller capsule and you have to take much less of it because it has such higher bioavailability. As far as cost difference, usually the phytosome, as with any herb, is going to be a little bit more expensive, but it's really not too bad when you're looking at the fact that you're taking a lot less capsules of the phytosome. I know as well as you do that when we have a consumer that's had success with an item, they're very, very brand loyal, and they may want to stick with the HCl because it's working great for them. And that's totally fine. There absolutely is a place for both. So with that, I'm going to go back to questions. Maggie, did you have any questions for me?
Yeah, we have more questions coming in, and we have some time here, so please do keep your questions coming, and we'll get through as many as we can. A question that several people have asked is, will the presentation be available on demand? Yes, it will. We should have it up in a few days. It'll be on WholeFoodsMagazine.com. And Julia, we were also asked if the slide deck will be available on demand.
Is there a way we can do that together?
Yep.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, so the answer to that is also yes. We were asked about the citation. I know you have citations on the slides.
Yep.
Asked about the citation for the phytosomal study.
So all the phytosome, just quick, all the phytosome studies were carried out by Indina, who are the, they actually are the ones who brought phytosomes to market years ago, and they're available on the Indina website. Just go look up Berberine Indina and they will come up.
All right, great. Thank you. So I know we've got healthcare practitioners in the audience. We also have natural products retailers. And I know a topic that we wanted to get into a little more, and we will get through the questions as well, but we wanted to just touch on before we wrap up, just merchandising suggestions. And we know, we have new people coming into the stores who, have just heard about this. They're maybe new to health food stores. What suggestions do you have to kind of capitalize on the trend? We're helping to grow basket size and helping to generate repeat customers.
Absolutely. Well, obviously it's going to be merchandised in a prominent place. I mean, if you don't have, Berberine going on a feature display or an end cap, you're going to be missing out a little bit. I want to talk more. Well, we'll talk about merchandising, but I truly believe that the best merchandising we have are our team members. They are the ones who are going to know to suggest berberine. They're going to be informed about it. They're going to have people coming in saying, oh, this is nature's fill in the blank drug, and I want to take it. And so really having an informed team is so much of that. But obviously it's often merchandised in the healthy blood sugar regulation category. So it's going to be next to the cinnamon, next to the chromium, other kinds of combination formulas. That's usually where I've put it in stores. There are also people who will, that's often adjacent to the healthy weight section, but it could also go, as a secondary placement in your herbal set. Sometimes people do just come in and alphabetically look for that herb. So.
Excellent. All right. So a few technical questions that came in here, some specific ones. Is the pea protein non-GMO?
I'm pausing because I'm going to need to get back on that. I believe that it is, but I don't want to misspeak on that. So we're going to have to figure out how to get back on that one.
Yep, we'll get you the contact and you can respond to that.
Okay, great.
If you take it late in the day, will it keep you up?
Will it what? Keep you up?
Keep you up.
Nope. I take berberine every day. I have for probably 3 years, unless I forget. And I'm also an insomniac. I've never had that issue or read anything about it in studies.
Excellent. And this was asked, are there any contradictions with other herbs or with other supplements?
Contraindications with other supplements, the only thing that I could really see being a true contraindication would be if somebody already had fairly low blood sugar and they were taking several things to help with blood sugar, and then we added berberine on top of it. Again, no science or research to prove this, just logic is if somebody had really low blood sugar, we probably wouldn't want to be having them on berberine anyway. But if they were taking a bunch of other things, which they shouldn't be taking for low blood sugar, then I would avoid it.
All right, question on the phytosome. If you could just reiterate how much of that version should be taken daily?
Sure. So it is 1 capsule twice a day. If you want to get to that, those numbers on lowering visceral adipose tissue, on helping with waist circumference and all of those things, the study was done on 2 capsules twice a day. But so that's like the therapeutic benefit, but the maintenance, the daily benefit is 1 capsule twice a day. And so that you can see the phytosome is far less than, as far as milligrams goes, than the berberine HCl. So phytosome 275 milligrams, berberine HCl 510 milligrams.
Okay, and a question, well, that slide was up. Marilyn had asked about the product, trying to find the product. So it's Enzymatica, Marilyn.
Yep.
I think that's how you spell
Enzymatica.
it. That's how you can find it right
The
there.
makers of Digest Gold. Sometimes people don't know our name, but they're like, oh, you're the Digest Gold company. Yes, we're the Digest Gold company.
Okay, question here on timing. Is it beneficial to take at night, or does it have to be taken with meals?
Since you're taking it in divided doses, it really should be divided throughout the day. That's ideal. But honestly, if you just are going to take it once a day, take it at the best time for you.
All right, on timing, you touched on this, but maybe you could just cover a little bit more. We had another question come in about taking it daily or cyclical with time off.
Again, I see that cited and I get that question fairly regularly on the cyclical nature of it. And that's also, that's not just berberine. Many herbs that are high in alkaloids, it's suggested to do them cyclically. So, 3 weeks on, 1 week off. But again, I've dove in and tried to find the answer on the why. I've talked with holistic gastroenterologists on the why, and there's not a great reason that I've ever found. What I will say is that if someone is using it for dysbiosis, then they may want to use the berberine to help to get into a cleanup state and then let the body regenerate a little bit on its own too. I'm a huge believer in that. It's like, okay, we've used the nutrient, we've used that, whatever that is helping us in a certain situation. Now let the body recover. And then maybe we do a few courses of it. So that would be one place where I would suggest that for dysbiosis. But often when we're working with people, we don't know that dysbiosis is the issue. We just know they have a whole bunch of intestinal stuff going on, right? And so that would be a situation where I would say, if you wanted to cycle with it, that makes a lot of sense. But again, I have not found any research to indicate that that's necessary at all.
It is the new phytosomal berberine going to be approved in Europe? I know EFSA is currently reviewing data on berberine, and its decision is due in 2025.
That's exactly, the position that we're in. We're just waiting for, is it going to be able to be approved? So as soon as that is known, then our international team will go after that.
Lots of thank yous coming in, Julia, and people saying how educational and wonderful your presentation was. So I guess in the remaining minutes, if you have any final takeaways you want to leave us with?
I just want to leave us with that this is one of those rare opportunities where there's an enormous trend that is attached to some claims that can be kind of sensationalized. And this is our opportunity as an industry to step up and to say, great, thank you for the foot traffic, really appreciate that, and for raising awareness, but it's our jobs to bring it back into what is the actual data, what is the research, and then our practical knowledge. I know that berberine changed my life because I was such a sugar craver for so many years. And I have taken chromium and that helped, and I take cinnamon and that helped, and I eat protein in the morning and that helped. But when I started taking berberine, it really, really changed my experience. And those are the kinds of things that our customers need to know. There's no magic bullet. We all know this, but berberine can be a part of a program. And again, we get to be the people who help leverage that kind of conscious taking of nutritional supplements instead of just being the next big trend. And this is truly helping people versus I'm going to try a couple bottles. heck, if we can get people eating a little bit less sugar, I don't know, the figure is something like the average American eats over 100 pounds of sugar a year. If we can just do that with some of our suggestions after they came in looking for berberine, we've had a win for the day. We helped someone's health overall.
Yeah, on that note, we did get a couple like just last minute questions. So since we
Sure.
have the 3 minutes left, on that helping, are there any companion products that can enhance the success of berberine?
Well, I mentioned chromium and cinnamon, and again, no clinical data on that, no studies, but in I believe it was in that 2015 meta study, berberine was studied in several different ways, berberine against a placebo, and then berberine on its own, and then berberine with lifestyle interventions. And the best results happened with berberine with the lifestyle interventions, where it was exercise and eating less sugar.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you so much. If there are any remaining questions that come in, we can try to get them answered over email. And as noted, we do have the presentations coming, the deck and the webinar recording will be available on demand. You'll get an email from Whole Foods Magazine letting you know when that's up. We're going to get it up as quickly as we can because we know there's a lot of demand for it. So we'll be working hard on that. And Julia, once again, thank you so much. And thank you to Enzymedica for presenting this information and for keeping us educated.
Thank you to Whole Foods Magazine, and also thank you to all the retailers for doing what you do every day. It is the most important job in our industry. So thank you guys.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, everyone. It was great to see you.